Welcome to Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast by Survey CTO. We share expert insights and practical tips on data collection and analysis, discuss innovative methods and tools to enhance data quality and security, and demystify complex data concepts to help people collecting data all around the world. I'm your host, Marta Costa. Joining us today is Lara Mikhail, the Senior Officer for Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning at USAID Egyptian Pioneers, a large-scale initiative aimed at building a more inclusive workforce in Egypt by advancing sectors like climate, health, and digital transformation. Lara brings expertise in data collection and analysis, having worked with international development organizations to design robust monitoring, evaluation, learning frameworks that prioritize data quality and security. With her deep expertise in developing comprehensive data collection systems, Lara has overseen projects that directly impact thousands of beneficiaries, including underrepresented groups across Egypt. Her background includes working with USAID's high standards for data management and reporting, as well as leading efforts to integrate both qualitative and quantitative data in ways that drive real-time project adaptations. Today, we will be diving into how Lara uses advanced techniques like data triangulation and after-action reviews to ensure that data doesn't just tell the story, but actively shapes the outcome of her projects. Welcome, Lara.
Thank you, Marta, for the great introduction. I'm really glad to be with you today to discuss the great points that you raised. Thank you very much for the intro.
Thank you. So, to set the stage for our discussion, as we will be diving into your recent work with the USAID Egyptian Pioneers, would you be able to briefly describe this project or program to our listeners?
Yeah, of course. So, as you mentioned, Marta, I'm working as a monitoring, evaluation, and learning senior officer at the USAID Egyptian Pioneers. It's a project funded by its name by the USAID, and it's being implemented by the American University in Cairo, AUC. Simply at this project, we try to build the capacity of a workforce that is going to be capable of helping Egypt meet its Vision 2030. So we do provide scholarship opportunities for undergraduate students. We provide them with scholarships to study at different universities across Egypt, including AUC. And we also provide training opportunities to mid-career professionals working in the private sector, civil society, and also in institutions related to the GOE, the government of Egypt. We also provide scholarship opportunities to mid-career professionals like masters and postdoctoral studies. We have a group of mid-career professionals who study or attend training opportunities in Egypt. And we also have mid-career professionals who are granted scholarships to go and study in the US, and mainly to study two programs, master's degree and short-term training. Three programs and postdoctoral studies as well. So the point from that, whether the scholarships we do provide for undergraduate students or the training opportunities and the scholarships we provide to mid-career professionals in the government and in non-GOE sector, which includes private sector and civil society, is to make sure that we are building their capacities for the students to go to the job market and to be capable of performing well and to help Egypt meet its 2030 vision, and for the mid-career professionals to go back to their institutions and to introduce changes and to help also build the capacities of people working back in their workplaces. So we care very much in the USAID Egyptian Pioneers about transfer of knowledge, and we work very hard to make sure that this happens. In order to place all our beneficiaries in the right programs, we do conduct on a yearly basis something called sectors assessment. This is a report that comes out each year, and this report basically it highlights the sectors that are of high priority to Egypt. So these sectors might change from a year to another, but for 2 consecutive years, we do have climate change as a cross-cutting sector. This report, of course, gets validated by a lot of experts from the government and from the non-GOE as well, including private sector and civil society, to make sure that the outcome that came out of this report truly aligns with the high priority sectors set by the Egyptian government. Afterwards, we start choosing programs that align with the sectors that are highlighted by the report. So this is basically what the program is about.
Thank you. That's super helpful. So do you have any numbers so that we can understand the scale of this program? So this is all over Egypt. And do you work with the majority of the public institutions, education institutions over Egypt?
Yes, Marta, of course. So, USAID Egyptian Pioneers is going to be granting 700 young Egyptians. 50% of them are going to be women, and around between 10 to 15% are going to be persons with disabilities, scholarship opportunities. They will be divided over 4 cohorts. And of course, we're targeting underserved and marginalized populations in order to obtain degrees and afterwards, of course, join the labor market. As for the mid-career professionals, we will be providing 60 mid-career professionals with master degrees in the United States or Egypt. Some will be studying in the US, others will be studying in Egypt. And we will be also providing 50 postdoctoral degrees to mid-career professionals from a GOE background as well to study in the United States. In regards to the short-term training, we will be giving around 410 opportunities for the short-term training for mid-career Egyptian government professionals with opportunities to study short-term training, and we will be providing at least 90 mid-career professionals from non-public entities, including private sector, civil society, with opportunities as well to study short-term training opportunities. This will be in Egypt. So this is in regards to the numbers and the targets that the USAID Egyptian Pioneers are going to be the targets of the project. This will be implemented over the course of around 9 years. It's a 9-year project. So these are the numbers of the project.
Thank you. So it's quite clear that the project is large, long, and complex. So I'm very interested in understanding the data collection processes in place to monitor, to evaluate, and to learn from all of this. Would you be able to share with us a little bit about that? What kind of data do you collect? I imagine that you need to monitor this, but you also do the sectors assessment, so you also need a lot of data just for that. Please describe that a little bit for us, if you can.
Of course, Marta. So basically, because I work as a monitoring, evaluation, and learning specialist or senior officer, so data collection is a very integral part of our work. This is actually how we say to the team that we are doing well or that some aspects are not going very well, and we need, as you said, we need to do after action review and to rethink of the way we implement our project or our different activities. So of course we do collect quantitative data and we do collect as well qualitative data, and to make sure that the data is as representable and representative as much as we can, we always ensure that we do data triangulation. So we accompany these the qualitative data and the quantitative data with observation from the field as well, to make sure that the data we are reflecting and communicating back to the team is representative of what's actually happening. So we're very keen on, for example, developing online evaluation surveys on each and every activity that we conduct. So by the end of each activity, we do send the beneficiaries, whether we're speaking of undergraduate students or we're speaking of mid-career professionals, whether from the government or from the non-GOE sector, we do send them online evaluation surveys in order to ask for their opinions. Ask them if things are going well. What do you think of the content that was delivered to you? What do you think of the instructors, of the teaching methodology? What challenges have you encountered? What are your recommendations? We do take the recommendations and opinions of our beneficiaries very, very seriously. At the same time, we do leave some open-ended questions in the online evaluation surveys so for example, I could ask the question in the form of a quantitative approach. For example, I would ask the students, could you please rate the session you attended from 1 to 5? 1 is poor, 5 is excellent. So I would ask them this in terms of a quantitative question, but afterwards I would ask them to explain why they rated the session this way. At the same time, whenever we do look at the answers, we do develop reports and we share the reports with the team. And then we have at the end of the report something called action plan, next steps. And then we highlight in this table what are the issues that were that were persistent and they kept on being raised inside the answers, inside the report or the survey. And then we tell them in another column, please put your action and the next steps and mention any other comments you want to add. This is very, very important to do because in the USAID system, we do have, of course, the monitoring, evaluation, and learning plan. This plan outlines how the project will be collecting data, how it will be monitoring its activities, how it will be collecting the data, who are the beneficiaries. We do have learning questions. So one of the most important parts in the MEL plan is something called beneficiary feedback plan. So the USAID is always interested to see what do we do with the data. So this kind of reporting that we have the findings inside the report and then we have a table asking the team to fill it out, they do see how the data is being used and they do see how we are responding to the beneficiaries' feedback. Whenever after we communicate this type of feedback to the team and to the senior management, of course, sometimes we see that no, there were serious issues raised inside the report from the scholars, from the beneficiaries. At this time, the team, because we are a team, I work as an officer, and then at the same time, I work with a MEL advisor. We say, for example, no, this needs further discussion with the students. We need to hold a focus group discussion with the students or with the beneficiaries, whether they are undergraduates or they are mid-career professionals. At this point, we do communicate with the because we have different teams at the USAID Egyptian Pioneers. So we do communicate with the relevant team and we tell them, look, X, Y, and Z issues are being raised by so many of the beneficiaries. So we need to sit with them in a focus group discussion to further delve into the issues raised. So this is when we go into depth and we conduct and we start to gather qualitative data in order to see, does the data collected from the qualitative method we are using correspond with and align with the data collected from the quantitative tool we are using or not. Of course, we make sure that the focus group discussion reflects as much as we can gender balance, representation for PWDs, persons with disabilities, and at the same time also representation for example, if we're talking about undergraduate students, so representation for the different universities we are placing the students in. And then we also produce a report and we start to link the data of the qualitative data with the quantitative data and to say, yes, the findings raised in the quantitative, in the survey, for example, we found resonance and we found correspondence when it came to the qualitative data being collected. So this is in a nutshell. I'm sure we're still going to delve deeper into the tools. So this is in a nutshell how the process goes with the data collection.
Yes, thank you. And you were very clear about specifying the different stages of data collection and how the different stages inform the next stages. I'm really curious to understand, given that you are collecting so many data, both quantitative and qualitative. How do you ensure that these data coming from different sources in different types, they come together and create a coherent story to tell?
Yeah, this is a really, really important question, Marta. Thank you for asking because I think that the main role of the MEL specialists is to make sure that the data collecting says the data you collect, I'm sorry, says something. It tells a story exactly as you said. So whenever we do collect data from qualitative data or quantitative data, we do merge them together in one report, and we do provide linkages between the data. So I think it's very important for any MEL specialist to kind of highlight patterns in the data being collected. So, for example, if I highlight, for instance, that the students are finding, for example, the leadership skills development program that we deliver to them very interesting and important and insightful. It's very important that we do back this up with, for example, testimonials, that we do back this up, for example, with our field observation, because it's important also to mention that whenever we go into the field, we do develop observation forms to be used by the team, because sometimes we have a camp, like a 12 or 10 days camp, where we provide the students with several interventions, like leadership, like entrepreneurship, like research. So the entire team participates in observations to make sure that these components that are being delivered in the best possible way, that they are meeting the indicators or the intended learning outcomes that we need to come out with them. So we also incorporate our own findings, our own observations as a team into those reports, and we do come up with a report that includes quantitative data, qualitative data, observation notes, and we come up with this coherent story, whether when we highlight things that are going well, things that are not going well. So we do say, for example, that, for example, we do have sections called in the report MEL reflections. When we go over the qualitative, quantitative data and field observations following each question. And we say that from MEL perspective and from the MEL reflections, we find these issues being highlighted as challenges, these issues being highlighted as recommendations, these issues as points of strength, points of weakness, and so on. So the outcome of the report is the outcome of data triangulation, observation notes, and field work, qualitative data and quantitative data as well. So what you said, like coming up with a story, is very important, because you cannot take just observations from the field on their own, or qualitative on their own, or quantitative data on their own.
Yes. And do you have any specific personal story you would like to share? How important, or like a proven experience of how important data triangulation is?
Yeah, so basically, data triangulation is really, really important, because sometimes, for example, you would listen to students while you are attending the camp with them, that they are facing, for example, issues when it comes to how, for example, the for instance, how the schedule is being very tight, or how, for example, there is repetition in the content, or there is, for example, two different interventions, but there is overlapping, for instance, between two interventions in a very, for example, it could be one topic that both interventions kind of overlap with them. So when we gather data from the field, and then we sit also with the team, and then we also give the students the online evaluation survey. We sit with them in a focus group discussion, and we come up with this. We go afterwards and say to the team responsible for the undergraduate students, look, this is something recurring and it keeps getting repeated. So we think, for example, that later on, and this is like an actual story, like later on, maybe the two service providers, they could sit together and they can discuss the outlines of their content, so that we make sure that something like that does not, for instance, happen during the implementation. And this is actually one of the learning lessons, and to make sure that also I'm delivering the story as it happened, because we do have also a great team that is on board all the time. So whenever something like that is observed, it's يعني in a very quick time the team communicates this to the service provider, and we very quickly make sure that the content is tweaked in a way where topics are not repeated. They do not get repeated. And this actually happened during the camp. But it was a learning lesson, and we came across this from observation, qualitative data, and quantitative data. And it was a suggestion that maybe afterwards we can bring the service providers together. And I understand, of course, that service providers will not be delving into details, but at least they will be saying, we covered this and that and that. And the others will be saying, we covered this and that and that. So we make sure that the students get experience, learning experience that is not repetitive, and that they will actually benefit from 100%. So this is an example of how data triangulation can actually help us come with observations and learning.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Great story
Yes.
to actually showcase how important it is. And for other
Yeah.
professionals that are now, let's say that they are starting a project and they know how data triangulation is important and they want to collect different types of data. They want to observational data, qualitative, quantitative. What would you say are the key aspects that they need to pay attention to, they need to take into consideration when thinking about managing this complex data collection system?
Yeah, I would say that the starting point, Marta, is to make sure that you're implementing the team, and to make sure that your service providers are very well aware of what you're doing. Because, not everyone is fond of the work the Mel do, and not everyone understands the work the Mel people do. So it's very important that you build rapport with the team, that you build connection with the team and with the service providers, so that they understand in the first place why data collection is important. So, for example, at the very beginning of the project, the MEL team was very keen on meeting individually with every service provider, holding several and regular meetings with the team to make sure that the team understands the MEL plan. They understand what the MEL team is doing, why the MEL team is requesting data collection from them, for example, in the form of regular reports, whether we're speaking of monthly or we're speaking of quarterly reports, why we will be sending out surveys all the time, why we will be asking to sit with the beneficiaries in focus group discussions, why we will be attending meetings as a MEL team for observation, because this is basically data triangulation. And then what we also do is that we do conduct regular capacity building workshops on what I was just saying. We do also conduct something called MEL plan refresher, because when people get consumed at work, sometimes they might forget, they might get for example, confused. So every, for example, quarter, we do conduct refresher to tell the team, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how you can contribute. And I think it's very important also to highlight for the team how important each and every one, how important the role is. Because, for example, if you do not, for example, for the people working in the field, if you do not prepare the setup for the MEL team to be working in, if you do not explain to the students how important it is to respond to the surveys, if you do not follow up with the students on the responses, you might get, for us, a very low response rate. So it's like the team between us and the students plays a very, very important role in making sure that we get the highest response rate possible, to make sure that the responses we collect are reflective. So I think that as a starting point, make sure that people in your team are very well aware of what data triangulation is and your role as a MEL professional. Make sure that the service providers are aligned also with your goal when it comes to data triangulation, and understand as well why it's very important to collect data. Why is it very important to store data? Why is it very important to disseminate data? Because also our work is not just only about data collection. We're speaking of storage, and I'm sure we'll touch upon data privacy. So all of this is very important. So I would say that this is like a key advice for someone starting and launching their own projects.
Thank you. And so we have been talking a lot about collecting different types of data. And I would imagine that to be able to collect these different types of data, you need different tools. So what would you say, how much of a role does interoperability, in the sense of different tools that needs to interact with each other, plays in your work?
Yeah, as I was just saying, like, for example, you cannot depend solely on one tool and say that this tool tells me all I want to know. So, for example, we do use different tools. Sometimes we use online evaluation surveys. Of course, they are the quickest tool to capture what's happening on the ground, what's happening in the field, the satisfaction rate, challenges being encountered, and so on. Sometimes, for example, we're very keen at the USAID Egyptian Pioneers at choosing also different type of surveys other than the feedback surveys. For example, baseline surveys. Surveys are very, very important because they tell us where our beneficiaries are standing at the time of the implementation of the activity. For example, we disseminated early in year one for the undergraduate students, we disseminated a baseline survey. What was the purpose of this survey? We wanted to know from the perspective of the students, after explaining to them, of course, what a baseline survey is, how they assess their leadership skills, how they assess their entrepreneurship skills, how they assess their openness to other cultures and to different perspectives. And we asked them to fill out the survey with complete honesty and to explain to us in some questions why they are rating their knowledge in this way. And to explain to us, for example, we asked them, for example, do you think one day you have your own startup? We asked them, what is the extent to which you think you know about the term entrepreneurship? So why did we ask them these questions? Because the students throughout the years of study with us, they will be attending leadership classes, they will be attending entrepreneurship classes. So we wanted for them to know where they to know in front of themselves, like I see myself, for example, at this stage at the beginning of my educational journey, but afterwards we might give them this baseline again, but it will not be, of course, called baseline in the mid journey. And of course the same survey will be given to them as an end line survey at the end of their 4-year or 5-year journey, depends, of course, on the program they are enrolled in. So what we do is that we do turn with the data we take from them. For example, some questions are numbers like rating. Other questions are strongly agree, neutral, disagree, somewhat disagree, and so on. So in our team, we do work on translating the statements into numbers. For example, strongly agree would be a 5. Agree would be a 4. Disagree would be a 2. And then at the end of the student's journey, we'll be comparing the numbers so that we learn the extent to which the students have developed throughout their journey with us. So, for example, a baseline survey is very important for the MEL team, people working in this field, to test the change in the knowledge attained during or throughout the implementation process. I think it would be also very interesting for the beneficiaries to see, in year one, I gave myself in self-confidence 2. But in year 4, after I attended and finished the leadership program, I'm giving myself a 4 or a 5. So it feels also very rewarding for the beneficiaries. We do conduct also pre and post test for the interventions. We do work with the service providers for example, they would administer technical pre and post tests. I mean, for example, they administer technical here, related to the content itself. Like, for example, they would study self-confidence. So they will ask them questions about what do you think self-confidence is? I mean, very, very technical. So we do supervise these type of tools. Of course, as I told you, we do conduct focus group discussions, key informant interviews if we actually want to, for example, with the mid-career professionals. We haven't conducted this yet, but it will be coming later on. For example, I would want to, I heard that this person. He studied in the US. He was very active. He participated in X activities. So I want to sit with this person in specific. For example, after he goes back to his work, and I want to sit with him and ask him, like, look, you took this opportunity. Tell me, please, what you did in the US. When did you come back, and how did you impart and transfer the knowledge? So sometimes we want to be like very, very specific, and we want to come up with a success story that we could share, for example, with our communications team. So we conduct an interview, not a focus group discussion, because we're very interested in a person in specific. So these are examples of different tools. Sometimes also we could conduct case study. Sometimes we could conduct something called most significant change. This is you kind of develop like a scenario with a few set of questions, and then you would give it to the person, and the person would respond on their own, like he would write his own success story. We call this most significant change. So there are multiple tools, of course, in our field, and it's very interesting to keep on using different tools and to kind of do linkages as well for the different tools you're using.
And how do you implement those tools in terms of technology, in terms of the software that you use? Do you also use different tools for data collection, for data analysis, for data visualization? I'm a bit interested in understanding the interoperability in different software systems that you need to use to implement these tools that you have been discussing.
So basically, at this point, we're using SurveyMonkey. It's the tool we're currently using in order to disseminate the surveys. SurveyMonkey, I'm sorry, it already gives you data visualization, like in the form of pie charts, in the form of graphs. So this is also like very, very interesting, because when you develop a report, you don't want to be very dry in the data you're using and in the data you are communicating, because people are always interested in visuals. So it's always nice to put a data chart, to put a table, to put a pie chart, so that people can very quickly look at a very high success rate, or a very high satisfaction rate. So this is the software we're currently using for the focus group discussion and the interviews and so on. We're still using actually, for example, we could be using Zoom in order to conduct our interviews and our meetings with the beneficiaries. Currently, we attended with one of our service providers this very informative session on AI, because AI, it's the thing now, and people are becoming more and more interested in how we can utilize AI, while at the same time we need to still maintain of the data we are collecting and using. But to be honest with you, it's still a new tool for everyone. I mean, AI, all of a sudden we found everyone using ChatGPT, and then people are very much against in the beginning, but then wait, we can actually think of how we can use it in a good way, while still also adding our input. So we're still trying to test how a tool like ChatGPT, for example, can be helpful in terms of qualitative data collection, and in terms, for example, of highlighting like patterns. If I want to use a gender lens while conducting the data analysis, or if I want to, for example, see if there is a particular issue that people with disabilities. So like coming up or helping me come up with patterns. But to be honest with you, this is something that we are still exploring. It's not, it's actually work in progress at this stage.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you were discussing this idea of using Zoom for focus groups, and how do you then translate the data that you collect in Zoom for analysis, out of curiosity?
Yeah. So basically, of course, before, like, everything we do is recorded, but before we start the recording, we do, of course, ask for the permission from the beneficiaries. Are you fine with us recording? And we also, of course, make sure that we communicate to them that the information they are mentioning with us, it is completely confidential. We do not transcribe data using the names. I mean, for example, we could be four people, we could have four beneficiaries. We do not, while writing reports, we do not mention anything that has to do with the beneficiaries. I do not mention names, where they are studying, nothing. So, of course, this is something we do start saying in our meetings. We do rely on uh, note taking while we are attending the meetings with the beneficiaries, but afterwards also we go back to our recording and we start transcribing the reports as well. Sorry, transcribing, I'm sorry, the meeting as well, like word by word, in order to make sure that we're capturing everything that was said during the meeting. Lately, we've been using something that is called iRead Assistant. It's a software tool. So basically, it's AI. It attends the meetings with you over Zoom or Microsoft Teams or anything, and it kind of takes notes and it gives you like a summary report by the end of the meeting. So this is something that we integrated as well lately. I think in the past. 2 to 3 months. So it kind of also like assists because sometimes also it's very hectic to attend or sorry to re-listen to our meeting. So this is where like you thank AI and you feel like wow, technology can be a very very helpful tool, but together with the software like iRead Assistant and the notes we take and going back to the meetings, you kind of transcribe and take proper notes out of the meeting you attended. So we do transcribe the entire meeting and then we start taking the answers and listing them under the questions we asked inside the focus group discussion. So, for example, a focus group discussion would have from 4 to 5 questions. We would start like taking the answers and putting them under question A, question B, question C. And then we start thinking of how we can analyze those answers, because the idea of the focus group discussion, it's not like what iRead Assistant does. It's not saying at this time this person mentioned this at this. No, you need to go into a deeper level, and you need to highlight the patterns that came. For example, a beneficiary could talk for 10 minutes, but he wants to mention that I'm struggling, for example, with lack of support. I'm struggling with not being able to manage my time. But they will tell you like a long, 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 long story. So in the focus group discussion, you would mention that what challenges did you face when we asked the students? You would mention that, for example, talking to X number of beneficiaries, it was clear that students are struggling with time management, they are struggling with X, Y, and Z. You might need to mention, for example, if the majority are persons with disabilities, highlighting this issue, you would want to mention that. And as a matter of, or for the sake of data segregation, the majority of the students who mentioned this issue or who are struggling with this issue are persons with disabilities or are girls that come from governorates that are more conservative in Egypt, and so on and so forth. And of course, we do have like a section at the end, which is MEL recommendations. So we do provide some recommendations, like, for example, maybe the coordinators can discuss this and that with the students. Maybe we can give them a session on managing anxiety, because we do provide students, by the way, with set of interventions like psychological support, leadership, entrepreneurship. They do also go on a study abroad experience. So, I mean, there are several services they do get from the scholarship. So we do afterwards give a report with complete analysis and data as much as we can. Also, data segregation. I mean that this was raised by women, this was raised by girls, this was raised by PWDs, and so on. So this is how we do use AI, we do use softwares, and this is how we do transcribe and come up with analysis.
Super helpful. And interoperability has these two sides of it can be between different tools, technological tools that you are using, but it can also be making sure that the data that you are collecting, that the data sets that you are creating can be integrated with external data sets. For example, I'm not sure if this is something you do with your project, maybe USAID has wider data sets to make sure that they are meeting their general goals or high level goals. Do you take this into the consideration when you are collecting and creating data sets, how to connect with external data sets for USAID or
Thank
other
you. Yeah.
international?
Yeah, thank you very, very much, Marta, because you touched upon a key component in our work, which is called collaboration, learning, and adapting, collaborating, learning, and adapting, CLA. This is a really, really key element in the USAID MEL system. And this is exactly when the data you collect, because you collect data from the field and from beneficiaries and so on. But this data is just not only important for you as a team, it's also important for stakeholders you're dealing with. It's important for other USAID funded projects and other USAID sister projects. So what we do in this component is that, as you can tell from its name, we do conduct several collaboration with other USAID funded projects. We do transfer knowledge, we do change experiences, we do change learnings. This could be in the form of meetings we do attend with them. Learnings, for example, other projects could have the study abroad component as well. So we do conduct meetings with them and we do tell them this is what we learned from our experience. And they do also share with us learnings also based on the data they collected from their beneficiaries, from their other stakeholders. Learning is basically that we do conduct something called learning sessions with the team to disseminate the data we collected and to ensure that the different units in the USAID Egyptian Pioneers are aware of what's happening in the field, what's happening with our beneficiaries. And at the same time, also sometimes we do share this data as well with the stakeholders, with the service providers, because it's very important for them to know what the beneficiaries are saying about the services they are delivering. We do actually as well deliver or conduct something called pause and reflect sessions. This is where also we kind of say, like, look, this intervention has ended. We conducted data analysis, data collection, we developed a report, we shared it with the team. Let's sit and reflect on the data collected. Let's sit and reflect on our key achievements. Let's sit and reflect on our, for example, opportunities from the event we organized, for example. Let's sit and discuss the challenges we faced and also the learnings we can come up with, because some events, they get repeated each year. So it's very important that we do reflect on what we can do better in the next year or in the upcoming year. So I think this is when you take knowledge collected and data collected to a bigger scale. Sometimes, by the way, at the USAID, we have representative from the USAID attending a pause and reflect session with us. So this is where you take knowledge collected on the level of the field and even inside the team, to the team itself, to the stakeholder service providers, and sometimes also to a larger scale in sessions we attend with the USAID where other implementing partners are there. So it's like a moment for knowledge transfer and a moment to capitalize on the great work that we do at USAID Egyptian Pioneers.
Mhm. Is this at all related to the after action reviews? Which is
Exactly. Thank you very
okay.
much. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for touching on this. So this is exactly what after action review is about. It's about you, the AAR is about you collect data, but then what are we going to do with this data? So it's about sitting. So the pause and reflect actually, pause and reflect sessions are actually they are a tool or part of the after action review where you sit with, as I was telling you, the team, where you sit with the service provider, where you sit with other projects, and you say, what are we going to do afterwards? How are we going to make things work better? Um, so as I'm writing now the annual report, we've realized that we've conducted 20 something pause and reflect session and learning session. So you kind of see, wow, we've did a lot of reflections on our work. And we kind of help the team to pause because, when the implementation starts, of any project, the cycle is very quick. You finish one component, you get into another. So without the MELC team, no one actually says, like, let's sit, let's slow down, let's see how we are doing things, let's see how we can implement things in a better way and in a more efficient and cost effective way. So this is actually what the after action review is all about.
Do you have any specific personal stories on this project? How you have seen the after action review to actually be actionable and improve the program to some extent?
Yeah. So last year, after the recruitment of the first batch, the first cohort of the undergraduates, we did realize that even though there were a lot of outreach and recruitment efforts, but some governorates, especially what we call frontier governorates, like governorates on the borders with other countries, we did not have as much representation from those governorates because, in the undergraduate while recruiting undergraduate students, we make sure that there is representation for Egypt's 27 governorates. So this is something we care a lot about. We care a lot about a 50-50 gender balance, and of course to have at least 10% representation for persons with disabilities. So we realized that when we made a pause and reflect session with a sister project that was part also of the outreach and recruitment process, and with the service provider, we realized it was not actually something that came to us by surprise, but I mean, we did reflect on the data collected, and after we did data analysis, that some governorates, even though very, very few, we're speaking of 3 governorates out of 27, we did not have representation from them. We did our best in the gender balance, but at the same time, we could not achieve a 50-50. It was something like 48 to 52, 48 females, 48 percentage females to 52 males. So it's still great, but we still want a 50-50 equal representation. So to do this, we started to brainstorm, okay, maybe this is because we could not do physical outreach, on the ground outreach to potential candidates. This is maybe because we did not include for example, certain key government players with us in the outreach process. Maybe we did not have enough non-governmental organizations working on the field with us also in this process. So next year, which is this year, 24, when we started in recruiting cohort 2 for our project and cohort 5 for the sister project I was telling you about, we started planning earlier. We made sure that physical outreach is as important as digital outreach. So we made sure that we do the right collaborations with key ministries in the government of Egypt, with key local organizations, key non-governmental organizations. Last year, we had 4,000 something applications. This year, we had a remarkable and unprecedented number of applications in the history of scholarships in Egypt. We reached 10,000 something application covering the 27 governorates. This year we have representation for Egypt's 27 governorates. We almost have a 50-50 gender balance. Yeah, like a very, very close percentage of gender balance. And we have very good representation as well for persons with disabilities. So this was a great milestone for the USAID Egyptian Pioneers to have this unprecedented number of applications in the history of scholarships in Egypt, to have this amazing representation for Egypt's 27 governorates. And I wouldn't say that it was only the pros and reflect session, but having, this time to sit and reflect and say that we need early planning, that we need this to be achieved by next year, and we have close monitoring for the number of applications we're receiving, and during also the outreach process to keep on reflecting, like, we need to do more sessions, we need to target more local organizations. So I would say that this was an amazing learning experience.
Great. There is just one thing that I would like to ask you before moving into our closing questions, and you touched this briefly when we were talking about the focus groups. I'm very interested in understanding how with so many data that you collect, and sharing this data and reflecting on this data, how do you ensure that you are not compromising sensitive data? How do you make sure that your data is secure and you are not compromising the data integrity?
Yeah. This is definitely something really, really important in our work because, there are chapters um, in something called ADS related to the USAID. It's like the ADS, it's like a directive that kind of outlines everything that has to do with the operations of all projects. Of course, not by name. I mean, whenever a project starts operating, things that have to do with finance, with the data collection, with privacy, with logistics. I mean, everything that you could think of. So there is, sorry, a lot of concern or a lot of we pay attention a lot to data privacy and data integrity and data security inside or at the USAID Egyptian Pioneers. So how do we do that? Basically, we do provide our team with sessions, and we do provide this session on a regular basis, especially to newcomers to the team. It's called Personally Identifiable Information Session, PII session. So this PII session, basically, it explains what PII is. So basically, what PII is, it's about any information that could help you get to the person you are providing services to. So, for example, their name, their gender, their national ID. We're speaking as well of the race. So all of these information, they could, if someone gets access to the phone numbers, where they live, we make sure very, very well that inside our team, everyone is aware of what PII is. They understand why PII protection is very important in the USAID system. And we do explain also that there are ways in order to protect personally identifiable information. For example, if you're dealing with personally identifiable information as in the form of, for example, beneficiaries' information are shared over email, what can we do to protect the data? How can we make sure, for example, that there is password encryption for the files we are sharing over emails? So we show them from, for example, Word, or if you're using Excel, how to do password encryption.
So does that mean that you need a password to unencrypt your data? Is that what it means?
Yes, exactly. The data is encrypted, exactly. And also, if you're going to send email, for example, you would send the password and username, or the password basically of the file in a separate email. And then, for example, you would tell the service provider, dear X, we are going to send you a file including the data of the students or the database of the students, but then in another email you would send the password. So we do actually share with them some tips in order to make sure that the data that is shared does not get violated. We tell them, for example, that if you have the data in the form of hard copies, for example, if you're taking attendance and you have the attendance sheet, please make sure as much as you can that this sheet does not include a lot of the personal information of the beneficiaries. What if we actually need this information in the form of hard copy? Then afterwards, you need to shred those hard copies after you get the data you need. Meanwhile, if we are not at the stage of getting rid of the data, you need to lock the documents in a safe place. Not everyone in the team should have access to those documents. So we do give them like tips and tricks on how to protect the data, whether we're speaking of the data being available on software or on a certain software, or the data is in the form of hard copies. We do also provide those sessions, the PII, personally identifiable information, personally identifiable data management information, sorry, the personally identifiable management session and protection session. We do also make sure that our service providers get to attend those sessions. And something also that we do, Marta, is that we give them something called a PII policy checklist. We ask them a number of questions. For example, we ask them, what do you do when it gets to data protection? Do you have a system in place to protect the data you collect from the beneficiaries? Who is responsible for the collection of this data? Who has access to data storage? What do you do when it comes to hard copies? What do you do with data disposal? So we do get this policy filled out. They send it to us, and we do save it on our drive because we want to make sure that also our knowledge of the system of the service providers, of how they protect the data, is also something that the team is aware of, and we have it saved as well. Also, at ASE, we do have a lot of procedures when it comes to data collection, data storage. So, for example, we do have certain technical procedures. Like, for example, you have to, when you log in, you have to receive a call from Microsoft, or you have to receive a text with the password. So, it's only us, the ones using the emails, and of course, the drive, who have access. I mean, not everyone will be able to access the data because it's something very personal. I mean, you have to get a message on your mobile phone, or you have to get a call on your mobile phone to be able to access the drive. So all of these measures, they kind of protect the data, and we make sure that the data is not accessible to everyone and is not it's not open to everyone. And I want also to highlight that even inside our team, Marta, when it comes to the drive, for example, we do have several folders. For example, ex-members from another unit in the team, they can see my drive and the folders that I have, but it's only view only, so that not everyone can, by mistake, for example, access the data and something gets messed up. So these measures, they kind of tell you that there is an actual system when it comes to data security and data protection.
Great. Thank you for sharing such a comprehensive data security processes in place. I think this is very helpful for anyone that are just starting to think about it and what can they do to protect their data. So this is super helpful. Um, Looking ahead, Lara, into new tools, new methods, new technology like the AI that we have been discussing. Um, are you particularly excited about any new innovations or practice that you have seen in this field?
To be honest with you, I really want to explore your tool more because I haven't heard about it before. But when you reached out to me, I started thinking maybe we can explore a new tool for dissemination of surveys. I'm interested also to see where AI is taking us, especially when it comes to qualitative data analysis, because we are now in the age and in the era of technology, and you can actually do a lot of work in less time using technology and AI. But I think we need to be very cautious when it comes to using technology, but at the same time ensuring that, as we were talking, data is secure, ensuring that the accuracy of the data is still maintained, and that you are capable, AI is capable of giving you the info you would do with your own hands. So there is no particular, tool that I'm willing to explore now, except for, when I refer to your tool. But in general, AI, I believe, has a lot to play in the upcoming period, and I'm very willing to explore tools that can actually help me do my job in a more efficient way, in a less time-consuming way as well.
Do you have any resources that you would like to recommend to our listeners? A resource can be a book, or it can be a specific technology that you are using and you really recommend. It can be anything.
Yeah, maybe I can recommend the USAID lab, because it's very, very, for people working on USAID USAID Learning Lab. It's called USAID Learning Lab, to people working on USAID projects, funded projects, because it's a very comprehensive place where you can find anything you need to learn about monitoring, evaluation, learning, CLA toolkit. It's a very, very, very comprehensive website. Also, there is the deck. I think the deck is the data. The data. Let me search for its for the word itself. The Development Experience Clearinghouse. It's a USAID also related website. It's a USAID run website. This website, it's very nice because it gives you case studies and it gives you information you might want to learn about from other projects around the world that are funded by the USAID. You can find things related to monitoring and evaluation. You can find also things related to actual implementation for different types of projects, learning, education, health, different types of projects. So these are two resources that I could actually recommend, especially for people working in USAID funded projects.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lara. I mean, I had a great conversation with you today.
Thank you, Marta.
Thank you for your time. Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast, is brought to you by Survey CTO. To find out more about Survey CTO and how it ensures reliable, secure, and scalable data collection, visit www.surveycto.com. And make sure to search for Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Survey CTO, thanks for listening.